Welcome to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we'll be talking with Jaysen Miguel about being City of Bunbury's Mayor. Jaysen was elected as a councillor on the 19th of October 2013, and in October 2021 was elected to the position of Mayor for the City of Bunbury. Welcome to Forest.chat, Jaysen.
Thank you, Paul. Great pleasure to be here on Forest.chat. Thank you for the invitation and look forward to having a chat this morning about my experiences with the City of Bunbury Mayor.
Great to have you on the podcast, Jaysen. Very much appreciated. Jaysen, what is the Mayor of the City of Bunbury?
It's a very good question, and in fact, quite often people often ask me that, or either followed by what do you actually do? So, of course, the mayors are the leader of the local government in the area, and of course we have 136 local governments around WA at the moment. Some have mayors, some have shire presidents. So, of course, cities have mayors, and the shires have shire presidents. So, you look back through the history of our mayors here in Bunbury, we have a huge number of them, all traditionally older males, so that did change the tune a little bit there with my election. But a lot of those have generally been a lot of them tied up in previously in different politics and whatnot. But there's been some very famous Bunbury mayors. Dr. Ernie Minier is probably one that comes to mind. Very well loved doctor, obviously in Bunbury, but was a mayor as well for a period. Continued on his doctorate and then come back and finished as a mayor as well. So, of course, being a mayor is being the leader of the council. Right now, we currently have we have 11 elected members. We are going down to 9 at the next election. There was previously 13, so we're in a bit of a transition period. Those 13 elected members are the decision makings for the strategic direction of council and of the local government. So it can happen a lot of confusions as well, because of course we have the council and then we have the City of Bunbury operations itself. So the CEO runs the operations, so your day-to-day dealing with what's going on in employments and doing stuff like that, that's our CEO. And then, of course, the mayor at the time is the one in charge of trying to set some strategic direction on where the city wants to be. Of course, the mayor and the CEO do work very closely together, as does the mayor and the executive teams. The CEO has some executive below him, Director of Planning, Director of Works, those kind of things. So it's very close. There's a close relationship there, but there's also a very clear distinction of separation of powers as well. And that's a very important point. You don't want your mayor going in there and telling staff members doing this and do that. We're here to try and set direction. We're here as the voice of the community. What I really like about it with local government, different with your state government and federal government, quite often they're obviously controlled by parties. And when I say controlled, obviously you're generally speaking, you're elected to a party. So very much voting in a certain way that represents your party's views. Local government should be independent, and it normally is. It is different on the East Coast, but here in Western Australia, we still have fully independent local governments. There's clearly people who are involved in local government who have political aspirations or political views. No problems with that as well. But local government's meant to be about, well, we're making decisions here for our city or our area. So from our point of view, it might be a planning matter, it might be a strategic matter on where we want to put some money into tourism or events. So things like this which really do impact our community. And again, the very, very clear differential between state government and federal government and local government is that we're living here as well. So, I live just down the road here, and I play cricket and I play golf here and do all my activities here. So you generally hear from it when you've made a mistake. Where in the other forms of politics, if you there's quite often people might make decisions based, and there obviously might be affecting a lot of people that they've got to make the decision, and but they might be not aware of the impacts. Where don't worry, you make a decision here, your next door neighbour comes and knocks on your door and tells you all about it. And on the other side of the coin, obviously we feel that I can have those conversations with people and say, hey, look, this is coming along to council. What do you think? And it helps you judge your views. We obviously have our CEO prepares reports for our council agendas based on professional advice, whether that's on planning matter, it might be on a works matter, it might be on a tender matter. We have our professional advice, but it's up to us to obviously then question that and make an informed decision based on all the information we have, which includes getting out there and talking to our community. So, long answer to a question, what is the mayor? But in essence, the mayor is obviously the leader of the council, which is the decision-making process for your local area, for your local city.
I really didn't think it was going to be that simple, Jaysen.
Yes, no, it's and there's a lot of obviously other things that come with the mayor itself. Some of the, so I guess I'm going to say powers, but powers isn't the right word, because I don't in any way mean that. It's more the roles that we have to take on as well. So one of my favourite things is do citizenship ceremonies. So, we've been enacted to be able to grant citizenship ceremonies for the minister, the federal minister. So we do 3 of those a year, and they're amazing times. You have a ceremony and you have people. The last one we did was only just last week, and 52 new citizens. I think it was from 19 different countries. Of course, they're coming from a range. Some of them have fled from some war-torn countries and obviously come out here with nothing. Some have obviously been here. I've done some citizenship ceremonies for some Kiwis who have been here for 50 years and just thought, oh, better get this sorted now. So how it means, and then you hear some stories, and that's what I love as well, because they're obviously all so much different backgrounds, but at the end of the day, they're all here, they're in our community, and we get around them, so it's great.
I'm sure that you'll have a lot to talk about when we get to the meaning side of things as well then.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I'll be able to probably share some stories about some of those special moments too.
Jaysen, what does it take you to be the mayor of the City of Bunbury?
Yeah, look, it's another good question, and something that certainly, if you'd asked me 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it's not something you'd even consider. I did never set out to be involved in local government. In fact, 10 years ago, I wouldn't even know what local government is. Oh, probably not 10 years ago, because I think I was on council then. Maybe 15 years ago, you wouldn't have even gone, what's that? Which is, the more you're into it though, the more you see, some of the things where it is important. And my grandfather was actually the former deputy mayor here himself. He passed away when I was very young though, so I didn't see that side of things anyway. But as I've been in this role, and you talk to people who dealt with him, with Graham Bricknell, and his love for the community and what he did for people around the area, it does make you feel, I'm pretty proud to be part of that as well. Again, that wasn't why I set out to be involved in that, and effectively how I got involved was just through some community things we were doing. And so I born in Bunbury, raised in Bunbury. I went to Perth to study. I'm an accountant, finished my accounting degree when I came back though, because I couldn't stand Perth, so I only lasted about a year up there, and moved back and finished my degrees down here. But it was around that time I was involved in our career club, and we had a few things going on, and we got involved with some local government with some things we probably shouldn't have been doing actually. We were doing some retaining works around the club. And my cousin was actually on council at the time, again, and he was sort of explaining, and he said, I'll come along to a council meeting and see how it all goes. So that's where I went, and he said, you should run. So this was back in first elected, 2011, did we say? 2013, I think it was. Yeah, it was just past 10 years. So in 2013, so I went along, and there was an election coming up, and he sort of said, look, he was a younger person as well, David, and he sort of said to me, he said, look, the council, you can see your room, we do need some different people on there. At that stage, I think there was David, and then Judy Jones, bless Judy Jones, and then maybe 1 or 2 other females, but the rest of them, and nothing against them because they're all very good people, with some older, middle-aged to older men, and that's been the story in local government for a very long time. And no disrespect to any of those, that's just, and a lot of those are very good friends of them, but they probably when they're talking about views on and trying to set strategic direction or thinking about how the city may go, maybe aren't looking at all different aspects. So we effectively said you should run. I didn't really have any idea, and I said, yeah, whatever. He put together a little flyer for me. I said, yep, you're nominated, and away it went. And back then, I don't know whether it was me, nobody now, but there didn't seem to be as much interest. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, but there wasn't a huge amount of people running for council at that stage either, where that time's changed, and we'll get into that in a minute. But there might have only been maybe 8 or 9 candidates for 6 spots. So I was lucky. I polled very well. I actually polled the most votes in that election and got elected. And I think on the Monday, the election was on the Saturday, and the Monday just afterwards, the Ranger rocked up at that stage. And even though it was only 10 years ago, there was no electronics. They dropped off the agenda in a file, which must have been 1,000 pages. And I thought, what are we getting into here? And it's talking about town planning schemes and R codes, and I had no idea. I obviously had a finance background, so I got the finances, but I had no idea about planning. So in all honesty, the first year I was like, you rely heavily on talking to people and trying to get a better understanding of things, because you all of a sudden you're making decisions based on very limited knowledge. And I look back on that now, there was a lot of naivety there, and you do think, you talk to 1 or 2 people, this seems to make sense. But in hindsight, and looking back at some of the things that happened at the time, you're like, I wonder how I would have looked at that now, and how you would have voted in a particular way. But you do the best of what you can, and I've always maintained that, I want to make, if I make a decision that's based on these reasons, and I always defend that, but I'm also not afraid to say, look, time's changed and I've got a different view on that now, and it was a mistake or whatever it may be. So we worked through that. So that's how it all initially started, and I sort of fell into it. But I spent the next obviously 4 years really enjoying that. I really enjoying being part of it, being part of a team. I've come, as I've indicated, been part of cricket and football, so I've always been part of a team environment. And I was president at the cricket club actually when some of that was kicking off. So I've been part of a executive team as well, and I like being involved in something. If you want to see something happen, it's always put your hand up and do it. So I'm still president of the cricket club actually 12 years later. So that's the only problem when you do. Unfortunately, sometimes when you do put your hand up, it's hard to get out of it. But anyway, that's another story for another time. That's why I wanted to be involved, and then I did feel that I was able to try and contribute, and there was a few things that happened in there. We started the early conversations around the skate park, which has obviously now been built, and that only just came up. That wasn't on any agendas, but again, you had some young people lobbying council. I think we were able to make a bit of influence on that, and off we went. So 4 years rolled by, and the next election, and I was just mentioned earlier that the interest, all of a sudden, whether it was just the City of Bunbury or whether it was just a wider look on what was happening. But I think that next round we had 26 candidates running for the 6th position. So all of a sudden there was a fair bit of interest back in local government. And as opposed to when I ran the first time, being the only one sub about 60 years old, there was quite a few young people, which was fantastic. And hopefully they were interested in that. And maybe I persuaded some people too, I don't know. But obviously it meant there was a bit more of a spread of votes. Luckily enough, the voters determined that I had done enough because I did get re-elected in 2017. So, and at the time, all I was focusing on was getting re-elected, which I did. But the city and most local governments do this, have a different role of electing their deputy mayor. It's elected internally by your sitting members. So obviously we had 13 sitting members at that stage. It was very interesting because right at that stage, and I just mentioned earlier that politics sort of stays out of local government, we had a member there who was tied up in the National Party, clearly wanted to be deputy mayor, and somebody else who didn't want him to be deputy mayor, so he was going to run for deputy mayor, and it was very clearly split. There were 6 supporters there and 6 supporters over here, and I kind of was stuck in the middle, and they sort of said, look, you're going to be the casting vote. So a member not part of the National Party, actually former Deputy Mayor, Brendan Kelly, rang me up one morning and said, I'm actually not going to be running for Deputy Mayor and I've got your 6 votes, so you can be Deputy if you want to do it, and you'll have 7 votes. So, I sort of said, oh, okay, we'll have to consider that. I hadn't even considered any of that sort of thing, but that's how it all rolled in at the end of the day, and I was elected as and I did give it some thought, and I thought that's a good opportunity. Gary Brennan was the mayor at the time, and I thought this might be a good chance for us to to work closely there. So I was elected at that time as deputy. Deputy is a 2-year term, but I did my 2 years, and at the following election I was re-elected. It may have been unopposed. I think there actually was one person who ran against me, but I think they only got 1 vote. So anyway, so I did 4 years as deputy, Paul, and that was great. And even during that time, though, I don't think I ever really thought what the next steps are. I mean, clearly it had been in the back of the mind. There was a couple of whispers about, what are you going to do? But I wasn't 100% sure. I was at this stage, again, just trying to do what I could for the community. I was doing more and more work in my accounting practice at this stage. So, it was only sort of as the last, into the second term or second part of the term, Gary come to me and said, I'm not going to be running. I'm not going to be contesting the next mayoral election. I think you should do it. I had to then consider what's my future in accounting. Clearly not going to be able to do as much as that and that. So it was only, and again, when I first got involved, I was a single bloke. I was just living my own life, didn't have no pressures by that stage. I had a partner, a fairly serious partner with Kate. So I obviously was speaking with her as well. So it was only, and I can tell you the actual time when I fully committed to it, because I remember COVID was going on around these times for our COVID. So it was around, it was in early 2021, and we were in Alice Springs because that was pretty much the only place we can get to, and I had a friend over there, and I was up at the Alice Springs Cup, and we'd hired a van with me and Kate were just doing some travelling around, so we were just on the road for a bit, and we were just tossing it up and talking about it, and I decided, that was in May, and I remember when I came back from Alice Springs, I said I'll be contesting the election, which was due in October that year. So that's where I decided to do it, and that's how the where it come to. And interesting enough that generally speaking, returning mayors or mayors, sitting mayors generally have a pretty good chance of rerunning in history. So all of a sudden, it was the first time in quite a long time that a sitting mayor hadn't rerun for a position. So all of a sudden, it was a bit of floodgates opens for those who might have been able to crack. So I think we had 11 candidates run for the mayoral position. A number of them currently on council, and they spoke to me as well. And even though they said, I know you're deputy, but I want to have a go. I said, yeah, absolutely. So look, it was fun. The election period was certainly a lot more than intense than a council. I think council people you can vote for 6 people during council elections. In mayoral elections, it's one vote. It has changed now. You do have preferential voting now, and who knows how that's going to go later future. But that stage was first past the post, so one vote, one value kind of thing. So yeah, we went out there with 10 other candidates who were running and put together a bit of a campaign based on, at that stage now, quite a lot of experience in local government, but also still a lot of passion for Bunbury, which, again, all the candidates do. Generally, people involved in local government have a bit of passion, but I still thought I had a fair bit to add. And the knowledge then I'd grown of chairing meetings and running meetings, it is something that does take a little bit. It's something that you don't realise, that there's a lot of governance that you need to understand as well. So I knew I had all those backings, and it was just whether or not the community thought that I'd be the best person for the job. And thankfully, in October of that year, 2021, they agreed. It was quite a close count. Amanda Yip, who was on council, ran second, and they no electronic voting at the stages, all paper voting, so they just put the piles in 50s up on so they have all 11 candidates, and every time there's a pile of 50, it sort of builds up your pile. Very old school way of doing things, Paul, local government, but it was very close, and it was only, right up until the very end of the night, you knew that there was 2, myself and Amanda, who were quite close in the running, and Amanda, she's still a good friend of mine as well. She would have done a fantastic job as well, but yeah, I was lucky enough to poll and get elected, and that was now 3 years ago, which is scary to think. It's absolutely flown by. But that's the how I came to be in this position that I'm in. Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. So you talked a little bit there about a couple of things. One was the balance between your accounting work and being the mayor, and how that made quite a big difference. But the accounting side also contributed significantly to your ability to understand the books of the council. But then obviously you had a lot of learning outside of that. Were there areas more than planning that you also had to learn up on?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first was elected, it was just you're in, and it's away you go. They have changed the rulings, well, not the rulings, they've changed the legislation now that new elected members have to do some training once they're done. So there's a number of different courses you got to do. They're not in any great detail, but it's just probably getting a good understanding, and that includes meeting structures, governance, obviously financial statements and those kind of things, planning. So there's about 8 different courses now that you have to do once you're elected. And interesting enough, when I got elected, that was in place for the second time round. Actually, no, it wasn't for the second time. When I got elected mayor, that had been introduced. So even though I'd been on council for 8 years, I had to go back and do these courses again, which you'd hope I passed, which I did, thankfully. But yeah, so it has changed now a bit. But as you're going, there are some amazing resources around that are part of there as well. And so you've got WALGA, which is basically the governing body of local government. They run courses all the time. So if you do feel, because you feel you want to know that you're making the correct decisions and how you've got to that, so that they run courses on decision making, on debating, on all those kind of things as well. And that's part of it and I think my accounting background certainly helped with understanding finances, but I also dealt with a lot of people and a lot of clients. So you understand dealing with different people and talking to different people about how you've come to a certain position. Especially dealing with tax agents too as well. Quite often they don't agree with you, so you've got to actually try and bring them along to say, well, this is the way it is, and so that helps. But yeah, there's an amazing lot of resources, and what I've certainly found in more recent times as being the mayor, so elected member, was one thing with the mayor. You sometimes feel that the deputy mayor was great, because every time bit of heat come up, you just handball that off, and Gary's in charge. Obviously, when you're the mayor, there's a bit of heat going on, or sometimes you can feel, well, you got to make an ultimate decision or ultimate position, and you can sometimes feel that you're doing the right thing. So what's been really good in the last few years is we're part of a few groups, and one of them, which I'm now chairing, is the Regional Capitals Alliance group. So it's the 10 local governments around WA, the regional capitals. So we're talking ourselves, Albany, Busselton, Port Hedland, Esperance, all the way up to Broome. So we actually just brought on the East Pilbara recently as our 11th member. But that group of councils that, we are an advocacy group, and we're talking about, and we've released some papers on the difference of funding towards regional areas as opposed to metro areas. So that's primarily our work. But what it has been a network for the 11, now 11, but previously 10 mayors to meet and just to share experiences around. So one of the segments we have in our meetings is around the grounds. So it's a 5-minute thing, right, what's happening in your city. So quite often, and all of a sudden when we think about, I'm really stressed about this, and someone says, oh, we dealt with that. So here's what we did. And might not necessarily mean the best thing, but it's just different ways to understand about, I've always said in local government, you don't need to reinvent the wheel with stuff. You don't have to go out and make a whole new plan. You go, well, what has happened elsewhere, and what do they do well, and what maybe they can improve on. The callous old WA way behind sort of time. Sometimes being behind is not the worst thing either, because you can actually look at what's happened elsewhere and say, well, how do we want to either avoid that or do that the same way, because it seems to work well. So, I think having those networks and being part of some other groups has been very, very important as well.
Having the network is super important. So we've talked about what it takes. After this break, we'll have a look at the difference being the City of Bunbury's Mayor makes. We've had a look at what it takes to be the City of Bunbury's Mayor. Jaysen, what does being the City of Bunbury's Mayor mean to you, your family, or the community?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, clearly in my early local government days, it was single, so it was very simple, and things have changed significantly since then. I mentioned, obviously, I had Kate, my partner. I've now got a little boy as well, who you did meet recently, Paul, and we're down at the History Expo. So, that has now made a significant change for me, because in a couple of ways. One, it's been very difficult because it is sometimes hard to spend as much time as I'd like. There's no doubt about that, where previously it doesn't matter, I can sit here till 10 o'clock and I've got nothing else to do. Well, nothing else to do, I've always got something to do, but I get it, family do. So there's certainly that compliance is being able to want to be there for the family, but at the same time I've made a commitment to do things. So, during summer, and I look forward to looking at the next few weeks coming up, we've got event after event, and I've always said if I'm doing this role, I want to be able to commit to that. So fortunately, Cooper's getting to the stage now he can come join some of these. So probably won't be taking too many of the school graduations and things we've got to go to, but we'll be right there. So it definitely has an impact in that way, and maybe a little bit of the negative. But I also know now that what we're trying to do is actually try and make decisions to support his future as well, and where he loves. And as I said, I love it here in Bunbury. That's not for everyone though. People might change, but you want to give everyone the opportunity where they're growing up. They've got the opportunities where if he grows up and decides he's going to go off and travel the world and live in London, good luck to him. But if he loves it Bunbury as much as I did, well, he can come back and go, well, there's things here that we've got the stuff that we needed to have, and things that are important to people. And whether that is I've always had a strong interest in sport, but I've also understood over my time that, I get invited, and now I'm a patron of a musical comedy group, which I don't have a single creative actor in my thing, but you go along because they invite you, and you realise that that's a part of the community that they're not interested in sport, but they need some support as well. So it's good to be able to contribute to that and seeing different parts of the community, and then trying to support that to hopefully build a better future for my son, but obviously all our future generations as well. So that's certainly with the family side of things. To me, it's very proud, and I can't emphasise the amount of pride you do have, as I've sort of indicated a few times, around dealing with complexities and sometimes dealing with people upset, and that's never going to change. We're never going to get it right. Unfortunately, we're going to upset some people along the ways, and sometimes they are difficult, and it's very difficult because that people are passionate about things. But when things are happening, we've been lucky over the last little while. We have officially opened the youth precinct, which has been hugely popular. We're about to open Hands Oval this weekend, which is going to be probably the best regional facility in Western Australia, if not in Australia, and it will host AFL games down there. We've got, but they're the big end stuff. But then it's going along to, you go to events that we've been able to support. So those events have happened and wouldn't happen without council support. Whether that's stuff down there, they do in the museum. The museum obviously run plenty of events. You've been down there a few times, or at least once. So we've got stuff at Breck happening all the time. We have big festivals coming from Fringe Festival to Southwest Irish Festival, which is something that I've helped them get going. And so being part of those things as well. And again, you see that community coming together. So for me, it's being part of that and being able to say, I was glad I was able to influence that. I mean, it's not like we knowing some of these things and how these things happen, they're going to happen regardless, because we've got some community members out there who are just unbelievable, and the committee at the Irish Special, which I just mentioned, and Ronan was their president, like, they were just goers. So, it's just nice to be part of it. You feel you're able to contribute. At the end of the day, they're the one doing everything. They've got the volunteers and they're flying along. But being able to say, well, we want to support this through this and seeing that happen. But then you meet those people as well, and there are some incredible people. And we started running a little bit of a monthly mayor's person, because I wanted to start, and I've now seen it from my role, because I get to meet these people. But we've got people in this town who have just been incredible, and they don't get enough recognition. They don't want recognition, because people who do that kind of stuff never do. But we need to start celebrating them more. And even, unfortunately, when it's the whole nomination process, people just go, oh, it's a bit too hard. But how do we actually nail them? We do our Citizen of the Year award. I could probably name 100 people who should be nominated. I'm not allowed to nominate anyone because I'm part of the judging panel. So we get about, somewhere between 5 to 10 nominations a year, and I thought we could smash that out of the park. But you see these people and they're doing great, and that's what they just do it because they either A, love whatever they're doing, whether that's in their group, or B, they love the city, or they've got time and they're happy to give their time, and it's fantastic. So being part of those things and being able to celebrate those, like we talked about citizenship ceremony earlier, and being able to be part of that has been incredible, as well as the other things we run. We obviously, our big citizenship ceremony is on Australia Day, where we have the Skyfest and read into that, and that day has been that's where the Mayor's Award's done as well. So that's a day that brings a lot of people in. So being part of some of those big functions is been true special. And then working with our team, and we have, so as I mentioned, 11 elected members at the moment. I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying that there's 2 or 3 of those that wouldn't really hang out with the other ones at some, because they come from different lives. But trying to bring them together and trying to have conversations is something that I've encouraged, and we've started running a couple of sessions, and we normally do at the start of the year and just say, let's just go away and we'll go to Mandurah and let's just actually nut out what we want to do. What is it we're looking to do here? What's your vision? And it's interesting as well when you have people with such differing views on certain things, but when you start sort of nailing what are the key issues, it's always the same. And I said, if we can start focusing on that, the little issues we will deal with and they'll bubble along. But when we're talking about, the key things that we want to see from Bunbury, we want to see more activities going on. We want to see, development, but sustainable development. We don't just want to be plonking everything, but we want to be able to see opportunities. And I think that's the main thing is that when opportunities present, how do we make sure we get hold of them? So being part of that group has been really good as well. Certainly had some difficulties along the way and some tough testing times. But I think it's also made me realise a lot as well that, quite when it's probably when you first go in, you go, this guy's just, they're carrying on for the sake of carrying on. But you might not understand that the way either they have seen certain things and they've got a different background. So they've got a totally different view on something. And, being able to try and comprehend that and then allow that to help with your decision making, I think is pretty important as well. So it's been a joy to be part of.
There's so much that goes on around the city of Bunbury that it's amazing just how much is there and how much influence the individuals have to drive things along, but then the council also has in supporting it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's whether we can do it, and that's what I've said previously and tried to be looking at, is that we need to be pro stuff, and that's not always financial support. It's going, how do we just make things as easy as possible? If they need to put in applications, we do live in a very much a governance field world now, and a red tape bureaucracy world, and we get that for certain levels that you need to have, but it can be frustrating. So how do we make sure we help these people who are already spending so much time doing it? So that's always a grappling one, because unfortunately you can't just push things aside and you can't push processes aside, but we need to be able to do support in that way. But we do, obviously, we have events grants fundings, which we support through that. So we go out and try and bring events in. We've got Perth Glory coming down this weekend, actually, so which is through one of our events partners as well. So trying to give that into town and do that. So yeah, as I said, it's certainly working with the community. It's not saying, well, here's what we're doing, here's the thing, everyone get on board. It's going, well, here's what we're thinking, and trying to get more community involvement. Now, community also, we talked about trying to get nominations, don't always give us feedback. And sometimes I'm torn. Is that because they're just happy and they're happy with things going along, or is that because they just can't be bothered putting in their feedback? So we go out quite often and saying, right, we're doing a community survey on this. Let us know what you think. Very little responses. We write what we base our strategic planning on. We do what's called a community scorecard. So we basically ask people to rank what's important to them and what they think we should be focusing on. So that's what all our documents are based on, that data. I think we get around about 1,000 responses to that, and we go when we spend a huge amount of time. And I remember sitting in some shopping malls there with flyers when people walking past and going, "What do you think we should focus on?" So although we try our best, no, we don't always get, and it ends up being a reasonable sample size anyway. And it's not the be, and we're not going right. These people said that. That's what we're doing now. It gives us that confidence to be able to say, well, here's what we think we should be planning, and then we'll test that again, and we'll test that with the community again. Quite often, it's only then we test it a number of times, and you go, right, we're planning this, and that's when everyone goes, oh, I didn't want that. So that's always fun. But and I think that's where, if I go back to the very start where you said you're part of the community anyway, I feel that you're able to have that conversation, because someone might come to you and says, oh, what are you going with such and such? What are you doing there? And you said, oh, well, we're doing this, or we're looking to develop this. And they go, well, what are you doing that for? I said, well, we spoke to the community. Did you get involved? And then, but you do get that feedback as well. All of a sudden you speak to 10 people and they go, I don't think that's a good idea. And you might want to go, well, okay, we've spoken to a few people now. Maybe we need to pull back on this or test this a little bit more as well. So, we all know everyone's super busy, so it is hard to do those kind of things. But at some stage, we've got to gauge our decision-making basis on some kind of, and community consultation is bigger. And I haven't found a single local government who've said, oh, we nailed community. We're so happy with our consultation. I think we do. I think personally the city does it really good. We got that many newsletters and social media, but we're still not. I think we're doing a very good job. I just don't know how we increase that participation to get responses back. But and it shows as well with local government elections. So it's across the board. There's less, about 30% of people vote. It's non-compulsory voting. So people just don't care. Don't worry about it. They're happy. Whatever. Let it go. So it's always going to be a way that that's where so much of that, just being part of the community, is understanding what people want, and then taking that back and saying, well, we've got different thoughts on that, which is where the council decision-making process comes into it. And we have those different thoughts, and you might say, oh, I've spoken to this person, that person. It's where we need to also say, well, just because Joe Bloggs doesn't like the idea doesn't mean it's going to be a bad idea. We just need to talk to them about what other opportunities we've got there. But that's where it can get very hairy, and unfortunately, that's where it can sometimes take some bog down when we do get either misinformation or people who really think that they're dead against something, but they might not really understand that we've spent 6 months worth of all their queries that they're worried about. We've been working our through, and that's why we're elected and spend time and spend every Tuesday in here going through stuff, is that we're working towards that. So trying to work with that and explain those situations is very important, but how we get them involved rather than waiting till we're at the end of the process and say, right, we're ready to do something. And then you have a whole bunch of people going, well, why weren't we included? And trying to bring that all together is a difficult one. But we'll keep working through it. That's our job, and hopefully we'll get it right.
It's definitely a worthwhile initiative to be taking on, definitely. So we've seen that being the City of Bunbury's mayor actually has quite a big impact on the community and allows the community to actually go forwards and be the best it can be, which is fantastic to see. We'll have a break now, and after the break, we'll have a look at how do you become the City of Bunbury's mayor. Jaysen, we've looked at what being the City of Bunbury's mayor means. How do you become mayor of a local city or president of a local government?
Either way, yeah. Well, if you follow my footsteps, Paul, you might just have to get lucky to fall into a couple of positions which sort of just fell in and weren't really planned. But no, look, it's something that you've got to clearly be very, very passionate about your community. You've got to care for your community. You've got to be wanting to be involved in that. But like my view would be, you don't have to, of course, but you need to have an open mind. You can't, and there's plenty of differences to this, but if you go on to council with a one view, you're not really there for the right reason. If you're there because you're really shitty about something that happened previously and you want to get on to try and change that, well, it's not no point having. There's no issues having a view to go and you don't agree with that, and you think you can change the way things are done. That's obviously important, but not saying it happened here. But there's examples around where there's been people who have been really upset with a former mayor or CEO because of something that happened, and they get a group together and go, "Well, we're going to get on there and make life as hard as possible for them." It's not going to work, unfortunately. And I've been talking earlier about trying to work as a group. Working as a group is fine. It doesn't mean we're going to agree, and we shouldn't agree. In fact, we need to disagree. But it's more about having that respect, because if you don't have that, and you're just going to end up with loggerheads and you have 6 people who vote against the other 6 people, well, it's not going to work. And there are some unfortunate circumstances of local governments who have gone into administration because the local government minister has kicked them out or they've all resigned. And that's not good for anybody, because you're never going to achieve what you're trying to achieve, and all you're going to be is the local government. The operations still operate, because of course CEOs still employing people, but there's things that need community consultations don't happen. So everything just goes on hold for 12 months. So hopefully that doesn't occur. Hopefully, if you're just very passionate about what you want to see do, but you can have that open mindedness and you're good at that, then you absolutely get involved. And the more people we can get involved with more views, and just at the election, quite often at the last election as well. I mean, there's election every 2 years, so. One mayor, one every 4, and in between, so you sort of drop off half your council. So next October, I'll be up for election, but there'll be 6 councillors up for elections as well. So 4 will remain, and then away you go. So just to keep that contingency. So I think it's very important that if it is something you're interested in, they're starting to pay attention. But before and after too, and there's a couple of elected members on here now. One of them in particular who ran in 3 different council elections, wasn't successful in the first 2, but then polled the most votes in the third one. So she was very, very much community orientated. She ran her first election, probably a little bit naive, similar to me, but at this stage, a lot more people running. So she wasn't successful in that campaign, but she loved it that much. She was still niggling, coming along to council meeting, niggling. When I say niggling, in the best possible way. She was obviously always asking questions to councillors, what can I do there to learn more. She then ran again 2 years later, wasn't successful. But then, when I was mayor, actually, when I became mayor, she ran in that election, in the council election, and polled the most votes. So, her keenness, it's something that she really aspired to do, where there are other people who come and go, and they'll come and run the election, don't get elected, and you may not hear from them ever again. Like, if you want to be doing this, you should be wanting to be involved, and whether that's just you're very interested in a particular area, you feel you can make a difference, that's the main thing, you're passionate about making a difference, and you're keen too. So it does require a bit of time as well, and that's where it has been probably traditionally more difficult in previous times to get people working full time to make those commitments, and we've been looking at that, and the local government sector have been looking at that as well. They've started to increase remunerations for elected members, because they want to encourage, that there's no point saying we want to get more diversity, but saying, well, you got to give up your day on a Tuesday. People in position can't do that. We've always modelled in here, and that Tuesday afternoons are, traditionally, we do all our meetings after hours for our official meetings, but we need to have briefings and things like that. So they generally try and happen as late as possible on Tuesdays, to allow for people who want to work full time. But we do also, I suppose, in the employment world, we are fortunate that in the employment world there is some flexibility out there with people as well. So for people who are interested, having those options to look around. I would be certainly recommending that if you're interested in becoming mayor at some stage, is that you've got to understand that the process a bit as well, and you've got to do some time within local government. It'd be very difficult to rock up tomorrow and say I'm going to be mayor or shire president and put your hand up and get elected without ever being in a meeting before, because you'll be in for a route. And if you end up on a council where you've got some experienced councillors on there, they'll give you a very hard time, because they'll start calling point of orders on you and standing orders and all kinds of stuff as well. So you do either want to be involved and look, there's people obviously been involved in different governance roles, maybe not in local government, but on board, so they do understand that. So, but your local government does feel like a bit of a different beast at times. So, my encouragement would be saying, we'll get involved in the system, understand the system, run on council, get a feel for it, and away you go. I'm always happy to talk to anybody, and I've been trying to talk to a few different groups with both our youth advisory committee, because it'll be always good to have young people on there, and saying if any of you are interested and want to come and have a chat with me for a while, I'm more than happy to let you know, what's worked, what I think may do. And what we've also been looking here at the city is an Indigenous representative. So, we've never had an Indigenous councillor. I don't even know if anyone have run. So, when we have some of our meetings and they sort of say, we want to have some representation. So it's election. If you've got people involved who are interested in running, would love to help them. Come and I'll talk to them about what it is. Again, they're going to have to run and get elected, and people are going to have to vote for them. But that would be something we want to do. But that again would be trying to diversify that views across. If we had, because a few people said to me before, saying you're the mayor, you should be that. I said, if it's up to me, none of you should be here. Just leave it to the decisions for me. The whole reason is we have 9 votes, and ideally, I'd love to have all 9 people with that. And you go, well, that person's come from that background. There's no point having 9 copy and paste me, because, well, I'll get what I want, I guess, but that's not necessarily going to be the best view. And I'm happy to admit I've got a very probably more strategic view on things, and I probably don't have some of the emotional decision making process that other people bring in. Where I think, well, I'm a database person. If that makes sense on data, that makes sense to me. Where other people will say, well, what about this or what about this? And So you need to have those different views to support you. So, and you're only going to get that by having a nice, diverse range of people. So for people who are considering, yeah, absolutely, come out, have a chat. And if it's not me, I mean, there's plenty of people who either retired from local government who have done incredible things. Mick Bennett was very popular out at Shire Dartup for a long time there, and I think he did 28 years. So some people around who would happily talk to you about their views, and but just come along and watch a council meeting. I know there's been a few people who've said, "Oh, we're interested in council," and they've come along to a council meeting and said, "No, I don't want to do that anymore." But I've also said, you might have picked the one council meeting and I said, you understand that part of the process is there are some times where you just go, what is going on here? But think about me when I rolled into the role and picked up a agenda paper and had no idea, and I just cast into it. You pick it up as you go along, and you start to understand it, and you start to get where it is, and you really focus on the things that are important to you, and try and make differences in that way. So yeah, good luck if any of them, your listeners out there, Paul, are interested. I'm more than happy to speak to them, or we would love to have. And the best thing we could have is having another 20 odd candidates running for various things, because regardless, it's putting pressure on everything because people are paying attention. And the more people running, hopefully, the more people voting in that way. So you're getting a good representation at that stage.
Fantastic. And there are some great things that you can do to get yourself ready. As you said, talking to people who've done it before, coming along to the meetings. Obviously, being there at every meeting gives you a better opportunity to see the full suite of what goes on. And then also, obviously, connecting in your community as well is probably important if you're going to secure votes from those people.
Yep, bit of door knocking always goes all right, and having a chat. We've done a few of those along the way, and you'll definitely get some interesting feedback along. Well, yeah, definitely will. But the meeting ones is interesting because we have an OCM meeting, so that's our official decision making process. That's only every 3 weeks, but in between we have the briefing session, which is an opportunity, very informal. It's still got some structure, but it's about going, well, members of the public can make deputations to an item. You've got public question time. You've got an opportunity for elected members to ask questions as well, and going, why if they might ask the council staff, well, I can see you've given this recommendation and you've given your rationale. However, did you consider part A or part B? And the staff might say, well, we did, but we still come up with this formula. And that's where, ideally, and it's probably not working 100% I would like to, and I'll not try and change that a little bit, but I really want people there to know, well, if you're not in favour of a particular position, how do we then start saying, well, I want to work to get an alternative position up, rather than when we get the full OCM, it becomes a very structured, formal thing, and people say, I want to do this, and saying, well, you've got to follow the process. And it can get a little bit messy because you're in a formal thing. You can't just sort of openly talk to it. You've got to raise your point, and then it can become a little bit messy, but that's all right. I'll deal with that one, Paul. Hopefully we'll have that run up and running nicely for the time election rolls around. But yeah, and the good thing about obviously being there and talking to the community is getting the understanding of, well, what is it the community want? Are they happy with their representation? Do they want different views? Is it is there a particular thing they'd like to do differently? We've been trying to do some different things here, and we've run some community park sessions, which have been actually quite good. And it is like we go to, I think we haven't done a little bit because it hasn't been the nicest weather of recent times, mate. But during summer we'll do it once every couple of months, and we'll go out to Usher and we'll go to Kerry Park, and we'll go out wherever, make Pelican Point, and just set up a barbecue and say, all right, you come and tell us. Because I think we're trying to go out there as well and talk to people. And some people come over or pretty fired up, and then you get chatting to them and they're like, oh, it's not that bad actually, after all. So yeah, we'll try and do that a bit, and we'll continue. But I guess to answer that question though, what would they suggest is that to have a good look at it first before you want to jump in and have a chat to people.
There's a lot to being the Mayor of the City of Bunbury, Jaysen. Thank you very much for your time. And from all of the Forest.chat listeners, we wish you all the best with your future endeavours. There's an election coming up next year, is that right?
It is. I haven't confirmed if I'm running yet, but I would be suggesting that at this stage, if all things are still similar, I will be having another crack. So I've told a few people that, but no confirmation just yet, Paul. But we'll see how things go. I appreciate you inviting me on just to share some stories. I can sit here and talk all day about local government, but it's great to be here on Forest.chat.
Thank you very much for your time, Jaysen. You've been listening to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we talked with Jaysen Miguel about being City of Bunbury's Mayor. Remember, there are 4 ways you can get involved with Forest.chat. Share the domain Forest.chat with your friends and family and people you meet. Listen to the published episodes at forest.chat/episodes. Book an interview at forest.chat/interview. Book an advert at forest.chat/advert. I'm looking forward to joining you with our next interview. Until next time, enjoy making it happen.